Our club has always been a forum for public figures, thought leaders, and decision makers to share their ideas. Here, we offer access to dynamic political, business, and public personalities.
We are dedicated to encouraging debate on the issues that matter to this city, this province, and this country.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Glenn Parkinson, and I'm an executive member of the Canadian Club of Toronto. We're glad you're here for our first virtual event of the club's 125th season. 18 months on, the effects of the pandemic continue to be felt. We've all had to think, act, work, and host differently as a result. Last season, the club adapted, and like so many of you, we showed resilience, hosting 80 online virtual events. We hope you joined us for at least one or two, and we thank you for joining us and spending some time with us today. Now, while we have the privilege and opportunity to gather again in person as we did last week, we also remain committed to offering an online experience for all of our guests from coast to coast. The pandemic has shown us how fragile international supply chains can be. Among other things, shortages of personal protective equipment, semiconductors, and even bicycles have brought this home. As lockdowns ease and Canadian businesses emerge from the disruption of the pandemic, many have already started rethinking and retooling their supply chain. Today, we're joined by Linda Seymour, President and CEO of HSBC Canada, and a panel of business leaders to discuss supply chains, their disruption through the pandemic, and how companies are navigating this fast-evolving landscape. But before we hear from our speakers, here's some information about how to participate with us. The click here to switch stream button helps if you find that your internet is slow. The video quality may decrease, but the audio quality should remain strong. Once you click on the Questions tab, you can enter your questions in the window and they'll be sent to our moderator. The Request Help button, located in the bottom right corner of the page, is for technical support. Thanks to the generous sponsorship of EY, today's conversation is free of charge. We're grateful for the support of today's discussion. The Canadian Club is a nonprofit, and we've been gathering people together for 125 years. It's because of our sponsors, partners, and members that we're able to do so. So thank you for your continued support. Now, to introduce today's speakers. Linda Seymour is President and CEO of HSBC Canada. Before being named CEO in September 2020, Linda held several senior executive roles across the bank in her 30-year tenure, including Executive Vice President and Head of Commercial Banking. After her opening remarks, Linda will be joined for a conversation with three esteemed executives: Anna Sanchez, Executive Vice President of Metrican; Martin Lieberman, Managing Partner of Lamour Group; and Warren Spitz, Founder and CEO, UCS Forest Group of Companies. If you have a drink nearby, I'll ask you to join me in a toast to our country, to Canada. And now, Linda, I'll turn the Canadian Club podium over to you.
Thanks, Glenn, and I'm delighted to be here today to host this panel. HSBC is Canada's leading international bank and #1 trade bank, offering superior global cash and liquidity management products and trade and receivables financing. Globally, we help companies trade across borders by removing complexity through technology and our local expertise in 64 markets. There is no one that is better placed to serve Canadian companies that are doing business here at home or internationally. And that means that our clients and I spend a lot of time thinking about what's going on in the world and how that will impact their businesses. So I am pleased to host this panel of successful Canadian headquartered, family-owned international businesses. These are companies that have been thriving in the face of some pretty daunting challenges. But before we hear their stories, I'd like to set the scene a little. I don't think there's a person here today that hasn't faced an empty shelf where there probably should have been toilet paper, or wanted to purchase a bicycle and there is just no bicycles to purchase, or had an appliance break and had to wait extremely long lead times in order to purchase a new one, or perhaps in your own manufacturing process, missing key components. Today, in emerging markets where many of our goods are manufactured, the gap between new orders and output has been hovering around zero as producers catch up with orders. And most Asian economies have order backlogs now below the global average. And in mainland China, Vietnam, India, and Thailand, they're back below pre-pandemic averages. However, delivery times have lengthened since the beginning of the year and are far more extended in developed economies, much worse than even during the peak lockdown, with a lack of critical parts curbing manufacturing output. The key challenge today is shipping. In the first half of this year, global merchandise trade rose above its pre-pandemic peak. In fact, the WTO says it's on track to be the biggest jump since 2010. In the first 7 months of this year, the volume of goods traded from Asia to North America was about 1.3 times what it was pre-pandemic, even before we hit peak season for container shipping. The ports of LA and Long Beach are the most congested globally, with vessels typically waiting over 10 days to berth, compared to less than 2 days at this time last year. Trucking is facing similar challenges. In the US, average active truck utilization is around 100%. That higher demand is also having an impact on our ability to ship goods from Canada to Asia. The volume of empty shipping containers leaving the Port of Vancouver is soaring, as shipping companies pay for them to be sent to Asia empty so that they can be filled faster for the trip back. And lower than expected exports continue to weigh on trade's net contribution to Canada's GDP. Fortunately, the rollout of safe and effective vaccines is now high or rising in many countries around the world. And it's been quite successful in Canada. Despite the fourth wave, we've also seen small business sentiment recover from pandemic lows. Trade and services had been severely curtailed by travel restrictions and is now recovering now that those restrictions are starting to lift. And we predict global GDP growth of 5.7% for 2021. While we expect it to slow in 2022, it will remain above the pre-pandemic trend for many countries. Here in Canada, we expect a solid consumer-led recovery this year. Next year, business investment is likely to make its first positive contribution to annual GDP growth in 3 years, with gains in non-residential construction, machinery and equipment, and intellectual property. In 2023, consumption should grow more slowly, and business investment and government spending will also support GDP growth. For decades, manufacturing has run efficiently on just-in-time inventory control, which minimizes costs, eliminates waste, and improves efficiency. But it relies on seamless movement of inputs around the world and creates risks of shortages when trade is disrupted, as it has been for the last 18 months. Many companies are shifting to just-in-case manufacturing, where components are stockpiled. This is costly, isn't feasible for all industries, and could lead to excess supply once demand normalizes. But the strained global supply chain presents an opportunity for producers closer to home, for whom a lack of containers is less of an issue. Canada is a small market. As a Canadian company, after a certain point, if you want to grow, you need to look outside our borders. Increased trade to faster growing global markets can help secure Canada's long-term economic well-being. Export Development Canada estimates that we're undershooting our current export potential by nearly $50 billion a year, and argues that we have room to roughly quadruple exports over the next 30 years. That's equivalent to about 9% of total exports in 2019. With trade agreements with 51 countries, there are ample opportunities for Canadian companies to source more affordable materials from other countries, branch out into new markets, and explore the world. And globally, trade liberalization efforts are continuing. For example, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership has been ratified by 8 countries, including Canada. There are just 3 countries yet to ratify and 6 additional potential candidates to join. And the Canada-UK Trade Continuity Agreement came into force earlier this year and could be concluded as early as the end of this year. I acknowledge engaging internationally involves risks and barriers. There's new cultures and customs, regulatory hurdles, different languages, foreign exchange risks, supply chain risks, time zone differences, and greater physical differences between leadership and production centers. But you shouldn't and don't have to do it alone. You need good advisors and partners with on-the-ground knowledge of the markets you are considering and practical tools to help you manage the risks, both of which HSBC delivers through our global network, helping to limit the risk for our customers and their suppliers. I try to speak to a customer every day. I am absolutely amazed by the agility that the Canadian companies have shown over the past 18 months. And the thing I hear time and time again is that they just get on with it and get it done. That might mean changing their product mix, diversifying supply chains, bringing in new technology to make their operations more efficient, building online stores, and even changing who their customers are, selling to new customers. Whatever they've had to do to survive or thrive in these most challenging of circumstances, they've done it. And make no mistake, many of our customers are thriving, including those that are joining me here today. And with that, I'd like to ask Warren, Anna, and Marty to turn on your cameras and microphones. And while you do that, a reminder to the audience, if you would like to ask a question, just click on the button to the right of the screen that says Submit a Question. Great. Thank you all for joining me today. So I want to kick off with a quick question to all of you. So just 1 or 2 word response. We all know that supply chains have been volatile this past year and a half. Before we jump into specifics, can I get from each of you 1 or 2 words that describes the number 1 thought you have had through the pandemic? Anna, let's start with you.
Thanks, Linda, and thank you to the Canadian Club. I would say responsiveness and caring.
And Marty?
Before I begin, I'd like to thank the Canadian Club and Linda and HSBC for the opportunity. A realistic optimist, or as my nephew says, think positive, test negative.
And Warren?
I'd also like to thank you, Linda, and HSBC, and also the Canadian Club, and Martin and Anna for joining me today. I would say the 2 words would be compassion, because keeping our people safe was the most critical thing, and understanding how all of this impacted them and their families. And the other is just maniacal focus on the business and all aspects of the business.
Great. And Warren, while I have you, what was your biggest supply chain challenge in the early days of the pandemic?
Well, ours has been, like probably so many, I would call it a whiplash. There were really very few supply chain issues in the first few months of the pandemic because there was very little demand. In our case, where we sell secondary building materials to the millwork industry throughout North America, construction sites shut down, projects shut down, as a lot of businesses did. So we were actually quite concerned about, being over inventoried and looking for business. And that, of course, pivoted in the summer when people, due to the lockdown, became, very focused on their, work from home and their lives at home. And so it changed overnight. And since then, we've just seen unprecedented demand. So what we've done basically is the same things I think a lot of businesses have had to do, that were in the right space where they had demand. and that is to build inventories, work closely with suppliers, take all the allocation that we could, and then do whatever triage we needed to do to service our customers throughout the demand boom.
Great. And Marty, maybe next to you, what was your biggest supply chain challenge in the early days of the pandemic?
Hoping that there's a future, but Lamour is a global company through its ownership of Terramar, Thorlo, BL Intimates. As Canada's largest importer of basic socks, underwear, and intimate garments for like Joe Fresh, New Balance, Bajar, Bench, and Thorlo, our initial goal when the whole situation arose was not to panic and recognize through a disciplined approach we can navigate this huge challenge. We had containers stuck in India, port congestion in China, COVID in Cambodia, container problems in Charleston, Vancouver, LA. It was very problematic, but the reality is by not panicking, it became a doable solution.
Great. And Anna, how about yourself?
Thanks, Linda. As Metrican is a tier 2 automotive supplier, we have plants in Canada, US, and Mexico, and automotive always gets hit pretty hard. We basically experienced so many challenges. We experienced the OEM closures, border closures, semiconductor shortages, material shortages, long delivery times. We experienced all of this at once. And it was really a time to think about how are we going to navigate all of these issues coming together at once. A lot of it affected supply chain, and what it took was really working with our suppliers and our customers and navigating through this, allocating our own resources into the supply chain and helping our suppliers deliver the product that we needed. We were impacted the minute China started having COVID cases, and we had to respond and react immediately, and it continued for the next 18 months. So basically building really strong supply chains, strong suppliers in our local countries in order to navigate through all of these challenges.
Great, thanks. Marty, I'm going to come back to you. Geopolitical risk can have a significant impact on trade. You have supply chains and our customers outside of Canada. How do you manage those risks?
Our supply chain is primarily China, and moving out is a much longer solution. Pre-COVID, our forecast team allocated 120 days from the purchase order to the customer's receipt. Today, it's 180, 210 days, whereas our in-transit inventory was previously 10%, it's probably 40% today. It's like a broken leg. We have to learn how to deal with it, navigate through it, and in a proactive solution, we've increased our logistics and demand planning team probably by 100% to give us the tools to move forward.
Thanks for that. I'm sure that's of interest to a lot of our participants today. Warren, what kind of changes have you made to how you manage your supply chains as a result of the pandemic? Have you changed any of your supply chain partners?
Well, the first thing we did was we kind of went right to the C-suite rather, and I think through the month of April last year, I was probably on the phone every day with the CEOs of all of our major supply partners around the world, and basically asked them, what challenges are you facing? So, and how is this going to impact your ability to service us? And kind of collaborated with them and worked through it. And then we just sort of made our decisions off of that. We've probably seen more of consolidation around some key suppliers that had the capacity and the ability to adapt. And then, relative to offshore versus onshore, we obviously had to bolster our supply chain within North America in order to compensate for, the delays in Asia and elsewhere in the world. So it was just really a collaborative approach with our supply partners.
And just curious, in those early days when you reached out to the C-suite, did you feel it was there was a different relationship building because everybody was kind of in the same boat of trying to figure out how to navigate the early days of the pandemic?
Absolutely. In fact, it was quite surprising because some of the CEOs that I reached out to, I mean, some of which I knew, but I didn't know them all. And, we brought together teams, so CFOs, operations leads, and so on, and had these collaborative meetings. And some of them were quite surprised and grateful that we went to the effort to have those meetings, and it deepened those relationships. And it's going to carry forward. I mean, it's helped us in terms of managing our business, and obviously a huge emphasis on S&OP. I mean, and the use of technology in order to, to create the data that we needed to support that.
That's great. Anna, what other trends in supply chains are you watching closely, and what do they mean for your business and the Canadian economy?
So we're always looking at transportation cost, manufacturing moving from China to other low-cost countries, for example, India, any technological changes, material changes in automotive. One really big one is labor shortages, people moving out of manufacturing jobs into other areas. Labor shortage caused a very big threat and impact in the automotive industry in completing equipment and being able to support new programs and launching new programs. So that was a really big impact on the businesses. We just have to think differently. We have to look at our strategy, see how we can support the lack of shortage by increasing automation, working with our partners, our suppliers, and developing a strategy that allows us to supply to our customers.
That's great. And actually, we have our first question in from the audience. And I'll pose a question and then perhaps let you decide who would like to answer it. Have you used supply chain finance solutions to either extend your days payable, help your suppliers, or reduce days sales? And does anybody like to answer that question?
I'll jump in, Linda. Are you talking about sort of trade finance? I mean, in order to... Yeah, I mean, every company would have a different need for that. We fortunately did not. But we definitely talked to our suppliers about terms, particularly early in the pandemic when we weren't sure where the economy was going. That quickly dissipated. The part that we found very surprising is how our receivables have improved. People are paying us lightning fast, and whether that is from government support, government subsidies, or just to ensure that they are at the front of the line in terms of supply. From a cash standpoint, it's been very favorable, ironically.
I would agree. I'm sorry, Linda, I'm jumping in. I would agree. We haven't really had any issues with payment from our suppliers, and our customers have been paying based on terms. So that hasn't been an issue for us in automotive.
Okay.
Initially, we reached out to our supply chain, the factories around the world. We were all very frightened, very nervous what the future's holding to us, recognizing that the retailers at the beginning of this pandemic were not paying as well as they should be. They took advantage of it. As the pandemic evolved itself, everybody acted appropriately. And I don't believe we have issues of receivables today, which we had prior to the pandemic. But we do have a serious issue of the length of amount of time it takes to finance the goods till they arrive into the Canadian ports and ultimately to our customer. So it does stretch the balance sheet dramatically.
Okay, I'll just add, and I think the question, was probing a bit to understand that, there are other options in financing your suppliers and your payments. And I think, HSBC is always willing to have that conversation what the alternative methods might be. But I do think that going forward, companies do need to look differently about how they finance their working capital cycle. Is there alternatives that would help them in times like this when supply chains tend to get fractured? So moving on from that, Marty and Warren, I'm going to pass this question to you. And I'll start with yourself, Marty. Has the pandemic caused you to rethink how you can leverage technology in managing your global supply chain?
We're fortunate to have technology today. AI, machine learning, predictive analysis have allowed us to have 24/7 visibility on our cargo. We can now drill down into the information to help us with predictability. We're now able to balance between our company facilities, 3PL, in moving freight and trying to determine where the best place is to serve our customers correctly. The tools out there have improved on a daily basis with the cargo companies, with the forwarders, et cetera. So it's a win-win situation.
And Marty, you and I were having a conversation just before this session, and we were talking about goods in transit. Having that technology must be absolutely critical today to actually manage those goods in transit.
It's frightening to know that it takes almost 3 months for something to arrive. So the question is, are you in month 1, month 2, month 3? Knowing that they're at the port, it hasn't connected, you missed that there was a chassis not working, there was a driver who didn't show up, but you need those tools. You've got to know where your shipment is. It's almost like you have a GPS or a drone on it or some scanners on it. You got to navigate the solution.
And Warren, how about yourself?
Well, it's a huge opportunity for us. We've always felt that we managed it pretty well, but the challenges of the offshore imports that Marty's referring to have really pushed us. So we're actually investing in new technology now that builds some of that AI into it and makes assumptions and so on, which are ever changing. But Marty, I may reach out to you after this call to find out what you guys are using. But it's very challenging right now to monitor shipments coming in from around the world and just to understand what the risks are, because they're at every level. I mean, there's the ships loading, obviously offshore, there's the travel time, there's the port waits, and then getting a truck under the containers. So it's very challenging right now on the import side. Fortunately for us, we're much more heavily weighted to North America, and we have our own fleet of trucks and trailers, so we've been been easier for us in that regard.
Right. Anna, just moving over to the automotive sector, I mean, you mentioned earlier in your comments about the shortage of semiconductors, which doesn't directly impact your business, but how has it indirectly impacted your business? And are there less well-publicized issues affecting the auto sector, and how are you managing them?
Perfect, thank you. Definitely the semiconductor shortage has impacted automotive across the board. We started with the pandemic and the illness and the closures due to exposure and illnesses, and then it went right into the semiconductor shortages. So that caused a ripple effect. A lot of the OEMs were closing, and they were closing periodically at different times. So as the OEMs close, all the suppliers to the OEMs start to close. So our sales were fluctuating monthly, weekly. Volumes were dropping off last minute. We didn't know what we were selling. We didn't really know what to produce. It was so hard to plan what we were selling to the customer. So it just caused like increased inventory levels, scheduling issues, overtime issues, delays. So it really hit hard. Like our sales looked like a roller coaster, up and down. And I have to say, what helped us navigate this really is the support from our customers or suppliers and HSBC. I mean, none of this can be done without the financial support of our bank. So that really was a key reason why we could, navigate and be successful during this pandemic.
Thanks, Anna. There's another question that's come in from the audience, and it's a great question. Maybe I'll start with you, Warren. It's what can government leaders at all levels do to support you manage your supply, to help you support you managing supply chain constraints?
Well, one of the things that is happening in the U.S. Now we're a U.S. Canadian business. In fact, we're a little larger in the U.S. than we are in Canada. But there's something called the Ocean Reform Act right now that's before Congress, and it's a bipartisan bill, and it's basically to deal with what appears to be unfair charging for freight. There's basically 3 international freight companies that dominate the market, So, I'm not advocating, regulation to solve all these problems, but that's one thing that government's doing, at least in the US, to try and bring things under some sense of normalcy and control. The other solutions I think are longer term, and that is building infrastructure and ensuring that we've got the resources at our ports and in our rail lines and so on to support supply chain going forward. But the pandemic and this surge in demand has certainly exposed, the risks that we have in infrastructure to maintain global supply chain.
Great. And Marty, did you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, I read this morning that Biden opened the ports 24/7. We alluded to it earlier. Canada could open our ports 24/7 to allow an ease of flow of goods into the ports. We're talking about infrastructure into the West Coast of building new ports. Government has to fast track it. The government has to realize that they're losing money daily by this supply chain issue, and probably has to create some sort of government task force, ASAP, to facilitate making it happen as fast as they can through regulation and through improvements.
Great. And Marty, while I have you, a lot of customers I talk to have used the opportunity presented by the pandemic to adjust their businesses to be more greener and sustainable. Your business, I know, takes sustainability very seriously. Have you been able to stick to your company's ESG targets in the face of the supply chain challenges? And what are some of maybe the innovations that you've done to make your product in a more sustainable way?
We don't have a choice. Number one, it's our responsibility to society and to our customers to show a global leadership on this position. We make products, so we're trying to create renewable source fibers. When we build our knitting halls for our seamless factories, we make sure that we have LED, like leadership in energy and environmental design principles. We work that we have eco-friendly packaging. We try very hard to reduce transports by consolidating production sites. And at the same time, every best practice that's possible in the offices we do.
That's great. Warren, any sustainable practices that you've taken in your company?
Yeah, there's been actually a lot. We've got a VP Innovation and Sustainability in our company that sort of drives that initiative for us. We've always been involved in sustainable forestry and promoting that. When I was president of the International Wood Products Association in Washington, I went around the world promoting sustainable forestry. I mean, not to advocate for our industry, but we do believe that our product is unique and that it's organic, it's sustainable, and it's renewable. But it requires responsible leadership to leverage that. And then, as Marty said, I mean, everything that we're doing, within the business, whether it's, electric vehicles, electric forklifts, just best practices. But I will say overall, there's been basically a tsunami of innovation in our organization since last March, driven by the pandemic and, quite frankly, driven by people working really closely together, albeit virtually, to solve the problems and challenges that we faced these last 18 months. It's been really quite a wonderful experience.
Great. And Anna, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add on the sustainability side?
Yep, we're always doing the same, making sure that we reduce waste and pollution, and with new electric vehicles in the future, this will help with that as well. So it's definitely a priority and something we continue to work towards.
Great. Another question's come in from the audience, and Marty, I'm going to put it towards you because I know that you do a lot of your supply chain is overseas, and it's will you import more or less from developing countries going forward?
The interesting thing about the apparel business is we always end up going to the lowest cost source where everything is, as long as the factory is compliant. So if we do more in the developed world, it costs more. If we go more in the undeveloped world, last week I was on a phone call with Ethiopia, seeing how we could bring hosiery out of Ethiopia. I found the factory, 2 years in operation, supply some of our competitors, it's all doable. It's a different game, the apparel business.
Great, thanks for that. Now, I have a question it's a bit more on the intangible side and the emotional side of the whole pandemic. I know you're all personally very invested in your companies and passionate about your business. For me, the last 18 months has been a bit of an emotional roller coaster. I was fortunate enough to take the seat as CEO at the beginning of the pandemic, so I've labeled myself a virtual CEO, which has come with its challenges, managing a large number of people. But having seen how we've responded and people have responded, I couldn't say more about the quality and the devotion of people trying to get through this pandemic together. How would you describe your feelings over the last 18 months? And I guess at the beginning versus where you're at today, and what do you see for the future? So Anna, maybe I'll start with you.
Okay, perfect. Definitely fear. Our workforce was very afraid of COVID-19 and the impacts on their lives in the community. With regards to business, automotive felt like this was going to be another 2008 recession where the sales were going to drop significantly. And we kind of went through it the one time in 2008, so we were prepared for a drop in sales, but we weren't prepared for the human aspect of it, how it was going to affect our people, the community, and so many lives lost. So, we had to ensure that our employees were protected, but yet we can continue functioning as a business, employing people and supplying product to our automotive customers. I think the biggest thing, and the most thing to be happy about is the way people came together. People came together as a team, did whatever we needed to do in order to succeed and survive this. So there was a lot of sense of pride, energy, strength, and working together through the most difficult challenges. It required a lot of communication, open communication to our employees, our customers, and suppliers. We were very open, telling them every day what we were doing, how we were moving through the days, and how we were going to respond. So basically being very fluid, but protecting our customers, protecting our employees, and making sure our employees' mental health was taken into consideration. And we cared. We wanted them to be safe.
Great. Thanks, Anna. Warren, how about yourself?
Well, the first thing I would say is publicly a thank you to all of our operations people and customer-facing people, because they really had no choice. Our warehouses around North America continued to operate, as I'm sure Anna and Marty's facilities did. Our truck drivers had to deliver the product. Our salespeople had to stay in contact. The other thing I think in our business that was a little interesting was that we operate in a lot of jurisdictions around North America, and it was like managing a bunch of different countries. And there was a different view of COVID as the pandemic hit. And just some of our operations include California and Utah and Washington State. And then Canada had more of a common approach to it, but in the US it was quite diverse. And so we had to manage our people and their expectations and our customers' expectations very much regionally through the whole pandemic, which was a challenge. Initially, we went on a war footing, like everyone did. It was 7 days a week, 14 hours a day on video. Our leadership team coalesced around the business. But as Anna was pointing out, it was really over communication. It was town halls, virtual town halls. It was recorded videos. We communicated to our employees with messages, Charlie McCaskey and people like that daily for months and months and months, daily communiques of support and encouragement. And the same with our customers and suppliers. We sent communiques out 3 days a week, which we'd never done before, just communicating. So it's been a challenging period, but I think that the message to our people consistently and remains to this day is their well-being and safety first. And our CHRO has said it well that the follow-on pandemic from COVID will be mental health. And so we've expanded our mental health programs to our employees and to their families. So those have been our key issues.
I could just add to that. Is that okay, Linda?
Yeah, go for it, Anna.
Exactly. Mental health was really key. And I did answer that question about, we feel right now a bit tired, but eager to move forward, like very resilient. And one thing I did want to mention with, the fear and the challenges in different countries, like all of our countries had different laws and regulations. And some of our plants like Dixon were down at some points like 60 people, and we still needed to make product to our customers. So I'm going to say what demonstrated teamwork is our plant manager ran a stamping press. Our office staff ran weld cells. We did whatever it took in order to supply our customer and make sure that our people were safe at the same time.
Right. And Marty, did you want to add to that what your thoughts were 18 months ago and feelings?
The past 18 months were very scary. It was an also an unsettling time for business, especially the businesses, especially the people that work in the business and the team that were employed on a daily basis. There's not a single day where we don't hear about the mental aspects for our employees and the team, how COVID has affected them. However, my parents have taught their children to never panic and to work diligently to break down each challenge into components. We work together as a team, tirelessly 24/7 to make this happen. And we also understood that depression and anxiety was on top of the list of everybody. And as a family, we took the position to never cut salaries for any individual during this pandemic, as financial security was probably the biggest cause of stress. About the future you talked about earlier, we're super excited. We feel there's a wonderful future ahead of us. And we know that growth can be achieved, but you got to be patient, you got to be resilient, but you have to have a clear mind and simple messages, don't panic.
I couldn't agree more with all of you. And I think that, we looking back on this, there's so many lessons that we learned and things that we, didn't have the burning platform to do, whether it was be more agile in our business or, we're looking at the way we work in the future. And, hybrid working is the new way. And in fact, in the past, people questioned whether it was effective or not. And I think I'm very proud to say at the bank that we're actually implementing hybrid working, and we've seen great productivity from our people, and they appreciate the flexibility and the time they've had with their families and being able to get a little bit more balance in their day. So I think we have to remember all the positives out of this and not lose them as we move forward into what I think is going to be a pretty good period of growth. We've had one other question come in from the audience, and it's, will Canada face the same shipping issues as the UK? And how much should we worry about rail capacity? And I'll suggest perhaps the rail capacity might be the bigger question for Canada, but would anyone, Anna, would you like to take that question?
We don't use rail so much. So our transportation has been affected, definitely. Will it continue to be? I hope not, when the supply chain issues start to sort itself out. Our transportation is typically from China to US and Canada and Mexico and all those related countries. We've had delays, but we haven't experienced something of that significance.
Marty, Warren, I don't know if you want to comment on your usage of rail, if any.
I can't comment that much about rail, but I can add on to what Anna said. In terms of freight, the freight costs are going down as of a few days ago. We hit almost 19,000 to the port of LA. It's 9,500. Shanghai, Vancouver was nearing 20,000. It's now less than 10,000. So we are seeing reductions and we are seeing corrections within the system, but time delays are not getting any better.
Okay.
So Linda, we use rail quite a bit. Our rail service has remained quite good. However, Canada being long and narrow, whenever there's a disruption, like in Montreal, where the port closed for a while and so on, it was very, very challenging to get things on rail and across the country. obviously. In terms of the previous question, and sort of looking forward, I just thought I'd mention the things that we're keeping our eye on as an organization, in addition to COVID, obviously, and supply chain, which we're talking about today, is obviously inflation, which I think is going to continue with us for a while, which is a concern of what that impact will have on the economy. Ultimately, interest rates and the impact of interest rates on the inflation. And then, of course, labor. And I'm sure everybody's experiencing that. I mean, it is just very challenging to get labor right now, particularly in operations. Truck drivers are the rock stars of the workforce right now, if you can find them. So it all kind of relates to rail and transportation at all levels.
Warren, you talked a little bit before about the ups and downs of lumber prices. How do you prepare yourself for that as a business owner? And you stay close to your management team, but it was pretty surprising how quickly it ticked up and came back down. How do you manage that? And how do you think about it in the future?
Well, our business is less on the commodity side. Our key lumber product is hardwood lumber, which is much more stable than softwood. Production is much more fragmented. And then the whole range of panel products and so on. But softwood lumber did catch us off guard. It went down fast. And it shouldn't have surprised us as much because there's such a huge production capacity in softwood lumber in North America. They were able to catch up relatively quickly. So we got caught on that a bit. But the rest of our products are somewhat more stable. But it's just communication, research, talking to your suppliers, and staying on top of it. There's no silver bullet.
Okay, good. And Anna, I know you bring product in and carry product back and forth across the border, Ontario, Tennessee, and Mexico. Have you seen a big impact with the border closures, or have you been able to manage?
So definitely a big impact with the border closures. And we had a lot of equipment being manufactured prior to COVID. So we had weld cells, presses, all of these equipment had to go to various countries. And the border closures put a lot of pressure on us in order to dial in the equipment. So we didn't have equipment support from the equipment manufacturers because they couldn't cross over. So we had to use our resources in order to get the weld cells going, in order to launch new programs. So we had to use a lot of internal resources, which were already, down, in order to get our equipment going. So it did one positive thing. It actually, developed the skill set in the different countries. They almost had to be standalone and operate a standalone plants for a really long time. So it gave them that skill set, but definitely it caused delays and lack of support from our suppliers.
So we've talked a lot about, how we've had to adjust our business models throughout the pandemic. I'm curious on the talent side. Has it made you think differently about the talent that you hire within your organization? And do you need a different skill set going forward to manage through what's to come in the coming years? Maybe Warren, do you want to start with that?
Sure. Well, I got lucky, if you will. I mean, we've had a very strong growth strategy for the last number of years. So we've assembled, just in the last couple of years, a leadership team that's quite a bit more diverse in their background and experience than we had previously. People that have worked internationally and worked for large international corporations and brands, one of which was onboarded just at the onset of COVID. So we're very fortunate, a new CFO. But yes, we're hiring people in marketing from the Middle East. We're hiring people from Asia. We're hiring people from all over, just for that perspective. And then, of course, everybody we hire needs to have more technical literacy, because that's technology is going to be driving our business forward.
Great. Anna, did you want to comment on that?
Sure. Definitely. We're looking at skill set, knowledge. It's very hard to employ general labor persons. So we're looking at automation to fill those positions and hiring higher level skilled people. But what's more important, quite honestly, in our business is actually finding the person that believes in our values. So really having a strong, supportive person that understands the culture, that has teamwork, caring, customer driven, that's really key. There's a lot of people with technological skills in the industry, but sometimes it's really hard to find a person that fits in the organization that wants to help drive morale and values and development of the employees. So we look for a lot of soft skills as well.
Great. Marty, how about yourself?
It's a new environment. Number one is the culture, like Anna referred to, best managed company, best place to work at. And we have to put ourselves in any person who walks in shoes, that they want to come here, they want to feel engaged, they want to feel that with a company that understands them, understands their new work habits, whether they go 2 days a week, 3 days a week, how do we deal with remotely. Job retention has become very problematic. People are jumping, and they're entitled to jump because they have challenges and they're not appreciated or they're not recognized. It's a very different world. The only thing that you can do is continue with your message that this is a wonderful company to work with, a wonderful situation in life to be part of. And we're committed to making people happy. It's all about respecting everybody, but it is a new game.
Great. No, I appreciate those answers. And I think as we move forward and the next generation comes into the workforce, I think, like I said, there's lots of lessons that we learned over the last 24 months that we can pass on and prepare them for hopefully not a similar situation. So just want to remind the audience that if you have a question, please submit it. We've got three very diverse industries here, and I would love to have some additional questions. I do have one, and it is, what is the most significant bottlenecks in the supply chain as it is forecasted that there are major challenges that may be compounded in the coming months? Also, can costs be better controlled to achieve a smooth correction? So, what are the most significant bottlenecks? We talked about shipping, containers. Do you see other bottlenecks coming in the future? Marty, do you want to start with that? You're smiling.
Smiling because my older brother used to say logistics is the easiest. You put it on a boat, it comes here, it's over. That was almost like 2 years ago. We don't know what's going to hit next. The problem is there's a huge unknown. And once you solve the problem of a port congestion, then you have an issue where you don't have the trucks. Then you have an issue where they went on strike. There was a COVID outbreak. So the problems we don't even know, we didn't even know about these issues that we're having today 6 months ago to allow us to plan the solutions. So there is the unknown. And the only thing that you can do is have a lot of contingency plans or what-if strategies, and in the same breath, be very patient on your timeline and allow yourself longer lead time to get the goods. And that way you can control the situation. Because the reality is whatever you planned ain't happening, and whatever excuse you never heard of. And if you allow yourself a bigger window for delivery, it'll all work itself out.
Okay, I can jump in. I agree with Morgan. So you just never know. Like automotive, we keep getting things thrown at us, and the current one in China after COVID and border delays is now China power outages. So now factories are forced to close twice a week in China. So that's delaying our product. So now they're working Sundays, and they have to work around that schedule. But something else adding to the delays from our product coming from China. And we would have never expected that there was going to be China power outages happening during this time as well.
Okay.
Linda, I would say the one that I think is going to stay with us for a while is trucking until we develop self-driving trucks and so on. When you look at the United States right now, they're trying to get this infrastructure bill through. I don't know if they've passed it. I don't think they have. And they're dependent on their highway system, as we are in Canada. And there's not only not enough truck drivers, there's not enough trucks. we literally are lobbying our suppliers just to get the tractors and the trailers, and the lead times are 6 months to a year to get a truck. And everything that we ship, and any of us touches a truck at some point. A truck takes it to the port in China, the container gets picked up by a truck to go somewhere, and then it's delivered somewhere. So I look at that as the biggest particular segment of the transportation chain that we're worried about.
Thanks for that. And I'm sure that resonates with a lot of people on this call today. The one last question I want to ask is of each of you. There's been we've talked lots about the business issues and consumer impacts of the supply chain stresses, but briefly, what are the societal issues that you see stemming from this? And Warren, maybe you can start.
Well, from a business standpoint, obviously there was huge winners and losers. And for those of us who have been very busy through the pandemic, I think we consider ourselves lucky, not smart. There's lots of people who are running great businesses, restaurants, hotels, and so on, that just got completely sideswiped and nothing of their own making. On a societal standpoint, obviously, anything that impacts the world impacts the disadvantaged to a larger degree. And we've seen that for people that they're living in, smaller homes or smaller condos, or don't have daycare or don't have childcare. And they've just been impacted so much more than people that have greater resources. So I think it's extremely unfortunate that the disadvantaged have borne the brunt of this. And I'm glad that governments have supported those people to the degree that they have. With the one little thing I would say that is a positive from the pandemic is the way that we have dealt with it as a society gives us hope that we can also tackle major problems going forward, including climate change, that we can rally around a particular, call it existential issue and deal with it.
That's great. Anna, did you want to add anything quickly?
Yeah, very similar to Warren. So like the financial strain on a lot of people in society, adding to the mental health issues. So I feel like very traumatic for some families and some businesses, people losing their businesses that have been in existence for 40, 50 years. So really the mental health impact of COVID was severe in our society. And to Warren's point, in some areas it's made us stronger. So we know how to deal with these type of pandemics or issues, and we're able to move forward.
Great. And Marty, I'll give you the last word.
I reiterate what Warren and Anna said. There's been it's not fair. It's just not fair. People have beautiful businesses and beautiful lives, and they woke up one day and COVID hit them. They did nothing wrong. They worked like animals. They worked very hard their entire life, and something comes out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they're wiped out. So we have a tremendous mental stress. We have families that still don't leave their homes. We have countries where the vaccine's not there. It's not readily available. The poverty, the rich-poor issue has grown dramatically, but we live with hope, and we're confident that we'll see a brighter future. Great.
I want to thank you all for joining me today. I see Glenn's come back on the screen, and I'm going to pass over to him. But again, I thank you, and I think your stories resonated probably with lots of people on this event today. So Glenn, over to you.
Thank you, Linda. And first off, guests, thank you for spending this hour with us today. I hope you enjoyed it. To Linda, Anna, Martin, and Warren, thank you for joining us and leading such an engaging and really practical discussion. I'm sure many of the leaders on the call today were, identifying with and, inspired by your experiences and the human aspects and the forward-looking thoughts. So thank you again for a terrific discussion. Thanks again to EY for sponsoring today's event. Our events would not be possible without sponsors, so thank you for your continued generosity. Thank you to our AV supplier, Van Valkenburg Communications, and livemeeting.ca for making it possible for us to come together today. Guests, I hope you'll join us for some of our upcoming events. On Wednesday, October the 20th, we host Ontario Minister of Long-Term Care, the Honourable Rod Phillips, for a discussion on how the province is taking further actions to protect long-term care home residents and staff. And then on October 26th, we'll hear from Patricia Gauthier, Moderna's General Manager for Canada, on how they're building up to help more Canadians. And to learn more about upcoming events, explore our newly designed website at canadianclub.org. Browse our rich archive of past events, check out our new and updated membership categories and enhanced benefits. Please consider becoming a member and supporting our club's work. So once again, guests, thank you for joining us. Please stay healthy and safe.